Hi, everyone. It's Ted here. I'd just like to thank technology, first of all, the gift to the socially awkward. So, this is my presentation. It's on this book representing African music, Kofi Agawa. A great read, a challenging book in a lot of ways. So, there's a lot of great things about it that I'd like to discuss. I think Mr. Agawa is trying to destroy popular myths that have been perpetuated for a long time about African music, created by scholars over the years. Now, one of his main tenets, I think, in the book is that Africa, visual representation. I don't know why I'm turning it around. As you can see, is represented by many countries and cultures. So to even umbrella so many cultures and countries over, in a giant continent as all one thing is certainly problematic. If you think about the Republic of Congo, what would it share musically and culturally with Ethiopia or Liberia? There's it's a big place. So I think that's an important thing he gets across. In fact, what does he say? Sorry. Now I can't find it. Okay. Oh, here we go. So on page 59, why should we bother to learn the strange and often unpronounceable names of people in remote places practicing weird customs when we can simply use the all-purpose term Africa? So that's true. So, there was a lot of laziness probably on the part of early researchers, as well as, good old bias and racism, etc. Now, and he also makes the point that Africa was influenced post-colonial by the cultures arriving in and settlers. And there certainly is a point to that, and it certainly, I think, speaks to the types of forms and types of melodies that started popping up, or the types of instruments that started popping up in African music. So I think that's true too. And I think, as well with all that, I think Mr. Agawa is a sort of a scholar who wants to be a provocateur and has a bit of an axe to grind. I think he sort of undersells African culture in a lot of ways. One of he seems to get a bee in his bonnet about is African rhythm. And I guess he's trying to make the point that there's rhythm in music in Europe and other places. He says, polyrhythms are found in various passages in Haydn, Beethoven, and Brahms. And if you're taking it purely on the idea that polyrhythm is just two rhythms, well, sure, there's lots of that in European music. Two rhythms mean it could be whole notes and quarter notes in the same bar. Sure, yeah, that's polyrhythm. Now, but I think maybe what he doesn't address is he doesn't address groove-based rhythms or more complex polyrhythms that show up a lot in African music. I had a chance to study with a master drummer from Ghana about 30 years ago at the Banff Center. And he taught us just children's song and dance, which I won't try and do now because it would be really embarrassing. But one of the things is that the steps you're making and the tune you're singing, even that. So it goes la 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 la. So the tapping I'm making is actually the movement that your foot makes, and even right there, that's a great example of 2 against 3. And this is what kids are doing. And I don't think that came from Portugal or Britain or any of the colonizers. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is, if you look at the countries involved in the slave trade, which would be places like that bought slaves. That's what I mean. Places like Brazil, Cuba, Jamaica, the United States, the Dominican Republic. What sort of musics do these develop? Another aid. So bossa nova and samba from Brazil, or Cuba. It gives us things like salsa and songo. Jamaica gives us reggae. I admit playing reggae on the brushes is sort of pushing it. But anyway, and especially, the United States, where you have jazz, blues, rock, and finally the Dominican Republic, which gives you the great music merengue. So the one thing that links all those things together is the African slave trade. So, where is that information likely to come from? It's probably from that. And I realize my role as a drummer that mainly plays, sort of popular North American music is, I come at from just as a biased place as, Mr. Agawa. So, but, and then one other bone to pick I would have with this book is that the other thing is he talks a lot about performance practices and critique of the performance practices. So he's often mentioning that, the the African musicians are often out of sync, meaning I think that they don't play razor sharp together, and attributes to things like drunkenness and but also he mentions tuning a lot, and I think again tuning is sort of more of a European concept, and that there's a lot more nuance to being in or out of tune than maybe he's willing to give into. So, it just feels like his saying there's a lack of critique, and they should be critiqued so we can view African music like we view other musics. Basically means he says we should treat them like they're European musics, and I don't know how fair. It sort of feels like the colonialism all over again, which is ironic because I think the author's African. So that's sort of my take on this book, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I hope I can answer them, and thank you for indulging me. And great, thanks a lot.